But welcome everybody. This is Rough Cuts, September 8th, 2024, and we're really excited to be streaming video. And the plan going forward is to continue to archive the audio in podcast form as we've been doing on iTunes and Spotify, and then we'll start archiving the full video as well on YouTube and hopefully we get some good engagement this way. But Nate, Matthew, really excited to hang out. We've got a fun agenda for tonight, but yeah, good to see you guys.
Glad to be here, man. I'm jazzed to see, be able to have like a normal-ish conversation and have the audio and the bandwidth kind of keep up. So it's gonna be fun.
We can actually cut each other off now.
Yeah,
I know.
It's speak over one another and it keeps up.
It's awesome. And we got our first comment, Drybones 1786. We will always remember, and it will be proven on our YouTube site that you were the first comment we ever got. So yeah, and added to the stage there. All right. So over on IG, I'm Sports Cards and Sunsets. Nate is in Cardboard Veritas. You can see there on the video, and Matthew 1956 Tops Guy. For about the next hour or so, we're just going to talk about our vintage collecting hobby, and we've got some fun topics here tonight. The main event for tonight is what Nate suggested we call Baby Got Back, and we're going to talk about some of our favorite backsides of our vintage sports cards, and that's something we talk about all the time. How much it's not just about the front of the card, but there's so much love we all have for the back of the card. So we'll get to that in a bit. But first, we have a couple initial topics that we're going to hit. And where I want to dive in is, Nate, it's a card that I think maybe is one of your favorite cards of all time. It certainly reminds me of you. But every once in a while in the vintage hobby, a card comes out of the woodwork that just shouldn't exist. And this one got a lot of attention over the past couple weeks. I think it was even one from our Instagram community where the card first surfaced. But I'm talking about the Wilt Chamberlain rookie card, 1961 Fleer. And there was an example that was found raw in a collection recently, brought to a dealer, ultimately graded. And Nate, I'm just going to kick it over to you to share a little bit more about the story, and then we can talk about the card.
Yeah, that sounds good. So yeah, I'll show it here briefly and then see how, you guys can see it here.
And for the podcast, Nate is not holding up the actual card, but he's holding up an image of it on his phone in an SGC Gem Mint 10 slab.
Right. You get a sense. You can't see it perfectly, but you get a sense for how nice it is. And yeah, Jonathan, I think that's right. We saw it. Well, it's interesting. We first saw it on Instagram, I think a few weeks back when DK Cards posted it on his page. DK Cards has a shop in Minnesota, and he posted a raw Wilt portrait and a raw Wilt in action card that both looked so ridiculously nice that I think a lot of us thought that maybe they weren't real cards. And so they then decided to get them graded. The cards had come in through someone locally. They got them graded. They sent them off to SGC. And then when this card, I think, really entered the hobby's consciousness was when Pete from SGC Pete, as he's often called, who I'm not sure exactly what his title is there. I think he's the CEO, but the main guy who runs SGC and kind of the face of it, put out a 3 or 4 minute video after this card was graded and came back in SGC 10. And he was talking about the unbelievable characteristics that the card has. And, it's the kind of card where I was just blown away when I saw it, and I think all of us were. And immediately, several of our chats started kind of blowing up with this card because it just seemed too good to be real. And the origin story was that apparently the person whose card it is, his family had owned a grocery store in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And this card had sat in a back closet in the grocery store for some number of decades. I don't know if it sat there since 1961 specifically, but it was just unearthed, I think, a couple years ago. And he, ultimately decided to bring it into this local card shop. DK Cards took good care of him, got it graded, and then, after that, obviously, it got some big recognition after the SGC video came out. It then made its way to Golden Auction House to be auctioned, but in intervening in that potential auction was super collector by the name of Steve Lichtman, I believe is his name, and he apparently
Who made an appearance on the Golden Netflix show, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, he was the one on that show that had the SGC5 T206 Wagner. That's just, I mean, that card, those words speak for themselves, but it's also like a really nice SGC5, a really pretty copy of it. So I actually have a little extra detail on this because I reached out to Steve on Instagram, and he is he's a very nice and easy guy to interact with, and he actually responded to me immediately when I asked him about the card. I told him we were going to be going on and talking about it tonight, and I wanted to get a little more background from him.
Nice.
And so yeah, he was very willing to share that. So he said, yeah, he became aware of it on social media. He saw the card. He was blown away by how beautiful it was. And he said
awesome.
he felt like he needed to try to make a move to get it. So he reached out to Ken, who's a buddy of his, found out that it was going to be auctioned. And they, Ken and the seller's representative and Steve were able to negotiate a price that was publicly announced, $1.7 million. And, I think a lot of people had speculated about what it would go for. And, Jonathan, I think you and I were kind of right in that neighborhood in terms of what we had guessed. So yeah, they were able to privately negotiate a deal, and Steve is it's pretty cool. He's not coming at it at all from the perspective of an investor. He's a pure collector, and I think we saw that on Ken's show, because Ken was sort of trying to coax the Wagner out of Steve,
Right.
and Steve was like, no, I'm holding on to this. It's in my collection, and he said this Wilt is not going anywhere. He not only that, he said it's his favorite card in his collection. And
Oh, wow.
Why
the Wagner
not?
is one of only very many incredible cards that he has. But he said he grew up in the Wilt era and really was connected with his dominance in his playing days, and he was just absolutely blown away by the beauty and uniqueness of this card. And so now that he has it, it's his favorite card in his collection. It's not
Holy
going
smokes.
anywhere, and yeah, he's over the moon, just like we are when we pick up a new card. So it was kind of neat to hear that straight from the collector's mouth, and to know that it's gone to a really good long-term home, and seems like it'll be there for a long time.
That's awesome. So awesome. I mean, I feel like a couple of things pop out to me right there. Number one, it's like the power of social media, right? You hear, not only did it allow him to be able to find this card and get excited about it, but then here you are, we're basically curious observers, right? And getting a chance to actually interact with the guy who has the card and hear a little bit from him, what it was like. But it's also this is just those classic stories that you hear in the hobby of people finding cards. It's locked away in some basement or whatever, hidden in some attic. And it's just amazing. This card from 61 gets graded in 2024, comes back Gem Mint 10. Just must have created so much excitement within SGC too when it was when they received it. I heard a little bit about that they're, it was the guy SGC Pete was he got notified right away. His phone started blowing up when they got the card in. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I saw the card, I think I said this in a chat with you guys. My initial response was, "That's the best basketball card in existence." And now that shows my bias as a collector too. And I had a chat the other day with Adam, the Real 27 guy, and he asked his community sort of, "What do you like more, sort of the rarity of a card, being very limited in production, think of a 1 of 1 or, a gold serial number to 10, or rarity of condition." And I responded condition. And I was thinking specifically of this card. The thing I like about it, or the reason that's where I went, is the card shouldn't exist. Anybody who's seen 61 Fleers knows that forget about it surviving for, 60 years or whatever in that condition. But just right when they come off the printing press, they're never that centered. The printing is never that perfectly registered without any snow in the color. And it's just, you don't see them that nice. I mean, if that card had super rounded edges over the years, it would still be a gorgeous copy, but it had those perfect edges, perfect corners. And so,
yeah,
I'm sure it's why that guy considers it the best card in his collection. Is you think why does this card even exist?
Yeah, totally agree with that. Yep. And you know what makes it even a little bit better? It has a rough cut. That left edge has a nice rough cut.
Know.
And Steve likes that as well. He said some people have said to him, "Hey, that shouldn't be a 10 because of that edge," and he's like, "No, you guys just don't know. Like that's a rough cut. It's supposed to be there, and it adds." Even a little more depth of character to the card, and I know we all appreciate that. But yeah, to your point about its, its eye appeal, and I said this to Steve as well, but I don't think it's the best example of that card by a little bit. Like it's probably the best, and there are 3 PSA 10s. This is the only SGC 10. We saw in our chat one of the PSA 10s, and it looks like a PSA 8 at best. It was graded many, many years ago. I don't believe any of the PSA 10s have sold anytime recently, and it's very hard to find images of them, but I would be surprised if any of them are even in the same league as this SGC. I mean, this card it's just, and right, I mean, you said it really well, Jonathan. Those of us who have sought this card know how many things are wrong with it typically, and to find one that has none of those things wrong, like, the second best card probably has 3 of those things wrong, and this has none of them wrong. It's by a country mile the best example of one of the best basketball cards.
Yeah, I mean, and actually, what I'm super curious about is like, what is the conversation now like in the high end 1961 Fleer set registry? The people who own the 10 and they're like at the top, they're at the top of this registry, but are they really at the top? Like that guy that gave that presentation, at the 2023 National, all about the 61 Fleer. And I think, he was one of the top people in the registry. And now he knows there's this like monster, there's this absolutely dead perfect Wilt just hanging out that's not on the registry, right? I think I love that kind of stuff.
It's interesting also how many of the vintage cards that have really been setting new records and new all-time high sales have been in SGC slabs. I'm thinking of the 9.5 52 tops mantle, and now this one. I mean, SGC, a lot of the Wagners is definitely they're on the radar. And before we jump to the next topic, I just want to celebrate here. We got subscriber number 5, folks. our buddy Tony TJ is on live. So TJ, we are feeling proud with you. I appreciate the comment. So I want to shift to our next topic. Matthew, I'm going to kick this one over to you, but one thing we all do as, I'll call us emerging content creators or people that are just starting to do some of this podcasting. We listen to a lot of hobby content, and we talk about it all the time. I mean, I think that's something we all got started doing this on another content creator's IG lives. I'm thinking of Rob, Sports Card Therapist. And so, Matthew, I know you wanted to kind of give a shout out to some of the other content creators out there. So I'm going to toss it over to you.
Yeah. So I want to kind of kick off this conversation with, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking not only about the content that we listen to, but, in the scope of being in the hobby and kind of searching out different communities. I think at least one question I'm always asking myself is, does this person love the hobby as much as I do? How do I figure out if they actually, because it's like this weird, not necessarily mainstream thing. You kind of maybe hide it from your professional life that, you're into baseball cards, or you're into sports cards. And so when you meet other people who collect, you want to understand, do they really love it the way that I love it? Do they care about it the way that I do? And are they not just interested in using how much I care about it to enrich themselves or do whatever, right? And so then when you I wanted to use this as an opportunity to shout out some people where I feel like they feel to me like they love the hobby as much as I do. And I feel like one way that comes across is when people talk about a few ways that people can kind of tell me that they love the hobby as much as me is number one, like through knowledge, like how much do they know about like different cards and things like that. But a lot of it actually comes down to not the collection that they have, or how awesome their cards are, because that can be accomplished with money. But it's more like, are they are they suffering enough? It's kind of like, do they show, like, have they gone through the pain that like a
Yes.
real collector feels, right? When you're like, desperately trying to get this card, but if you need to get it, you've got to sacrifice a whole bunch. And so a shout out I wanted to give was to Iowa Dave Sports Cards, who had that really would want people to go back and like listen to his podcast where he talks about what he went through to get his ultimate card, which was the 1948 Leaf Jackie Robinson rookie.
Yeah.
And how, it was just like the sheer number of cards that he had to go through in terms of like buying and selling, and just the journey he was on to get to that point. And then at the end, it came down to him giving up some cards that like he really, really loved. Like there was the, what was it? The Red Heart
Musial. Yeah.
The Red Heart Musial. And I think he had an amazing example of that. And he kind of had to be like, okay, if I want to get this Jackie, this card has to go. And I feel like, people talking through intelligently, how they, what's going through their mind when they're making these kinds of decisions. That's just so endearing. And I think he did such a good job of, walking us through that story of picking up that Jackie, and then also describing like what it felt like when he got the card in his hand. And I feel like as he's sharing his emotions, and you're thinking about when you've received big cards in the past or done big trades, and you're like, oh yeah, I totally remember that feeling, and like the excitement and the just the pure terror of like, am I doing the right thing kind of stuff. So I think he did a really great job of explaining that. Yeah, and Bob Hosa says Iowa Dave's story buying the Jackie is the collector story of the year in the hobby. I think so too. He just told it so well. Everybody's rooting for the guy. He's in the shallow end, and then he's swimming over to the deep end a little bit to go after the Jackie. So that was one I definitely wanted to shout out. Another one is the Rated Rabbi. He recently completed his grand saga of his retelling of the 1984 Major League Baseball All-Star Game, where he went, and it was like this 50 episode kind of saga of, not only walking through the game, but talking through just like pop culture and everything that was happening in those times. And it brought me so much joy, on my drives to work, listening to his story. And similarly, you can just hear the passion that he has for the hobby, and the words that he uses, and describing about, his life as a rabbi, and how, cards are like an outlet for him. And you can just hear in his words, how much joy the hobby brings him. And hearing that is something that's like, yeah, this guy gets it. This guy, I feel the warm embrace of him in the community. So he recently completed that. And if folks haven't, listen to it, I highly recommend it. He also, in his penultimate episode, I think was one of my favorites, where he kind of read through some interesting books about like collecting, and right, he had some quotes from some people about just like collecting in general. I think they were mostly talking about the art world, but just some really cool stuff about how collecting is really this like this vehicle that like exists outside of time. And so, especially us as vintage collectors who have, cards going back to the 1800s, all the way through to the present, how, you're leafing through your Zion case, and you're like zooming through like more than a century of time, and thinking about all the kinds of things that happened in the world over that time frame, kind of, and then what's kind of captured in the snapshot of cards, often on their backs, as we'll talk about later. So the last shout out I want to give is to Victory Investments, and his shout out I'm giving because I'm just going to grab it.
Yeah, he's such a great content creator too.
Yeah, he is, and he sold me this base. So this is a base from Wrigley Field. You can see it there.
That's amazing.
It's from 2019. It was used in many different games, and he went to this game that was in there it is, 2019, where Chris Bryant hit 2 home runs and the Cubs won 16-6. So he bought
Wow.
this because I think he said it was his first time at Wrigley. And so then, he'd always had it in a box in his garage. And I'm like, dude, I will absolutely, I still don't know like how to put it up on my wall, but it's pretty cool to have a base that was used in Wrigley Field, over the time frame. Of course, it's when a lot of the players from the 2016 World Series team, were still on the field and stuff like that. So that was really cool. So I wanted to give Sean a shout out for thinking of me with this base and allowing me to buy it from him. Yeah.
Very cool. I'll tell you a couple things that popped into my head. One, when you were sharing, how can you tell when another collector loves the hobby as much as you do? The suffering popped right into my head. I love that point. But another one thing that popped into my head was velocity, and by that I actually mean the slower the velocity in some ways. And I think that goes in with, like, if it's hard, you can't just immediately get everything you want. When people have this like slow plodding velocity of their collecting, where they're thinking about it in years or even decades, sometimes with these goals. And Iowa, Dave, that was such a great example where he spent so much time building this collection that ultimately led to getting his Grail card. And I love, I say this all the time, I love a goal in the hobby that's going to take me years and years and years. And so that's something I really enjoy. And another guy that popped into my head is Jeremy Lee. When he recently picked up the batting Gaudy Ruth, the 144, and he's like, this is my favorite car. I'm a guy who's been in the hobby and he collects so many different things, but just seeing his joy at getting this card, and he couldn't stop thinking about it, and he's got it on his nightstand. When you see that joy too, it's contagious. So he popped into my head as well. How about you, Nate?
Yeah, one of the guys I think about is Luke Bleecker Street Cards, in terms of, passionate collector, and, just some of the projects I always think about with him are his raw binder with his 2003 Topps Chrome black refractors. And I think he's down to maybe just needing the LeBron, maybe he needs a couple others, but that's a massive modern collecting project.
Yeah.
That's just so fun and in the binder up our alley. And then, his magnum opus is the 48 leaf signed set, and he's, continues to tick off cards there. I don't know if he has the most of anyone currently in terms of signed leaf cards. I think there's 98 cards in the set. And I'm pretty sure he's over half. I know that there are several that there's no graded example of, no known example of. So that, he's going to have to figure out what exactly to do on. He and I have talked about maybe he gets the card and then we've seen that they used to do where you get it either slabbed or like framed with an autograph beneath it. So that you have kind of the card.
Oh, cool.
Maybe that's a way to fill it out or something. But, I tell him he's the most quixotic collector that I know. They just, who starts a 48 leaf signed set and like actually is serious about trying to complete it? And he's young enough, maybe he'll get it done. But, the other thing that comes to mind for me in talking about, really passionate collectors and, us thinking about this was, it's just so fun when we get some new guys on Instagram that are kind of like us in that regard. And so in the last year, the guys that have joined that come to mind, and I know you guys, follow and appreciate these guys too, but Southern Collector 14, Vintage Hobby and Craft, and Jackie's Jordan's Mantles Oh My are all within the last year or so on IG. And, they're guys that just show their passion, I think, by putting up, beautiful images of their cards, going deep in their write-ups and the stories of how they got the cards and what they mean to them. And, we all show our passion in different ways, but I love it when somebody puts up a card and tells me why they love it and why it's going to be in their collection a long time and the history of it and why they wanted it and how they got. And those three guys all do that. And so, those are, you guys do that. And, when I see one of those people post, I get excited because I know it's going to be really cool. So I just wanted to shout them out and their passion for the hobby too.
Great call. Yeah. And man, I can't hit the heart on Instagram fast enough when I see those posts, because the stuff they're collecting and the way they display it, it's just gorgeous. Yeah. That's why it's such a fun community to be a part of. And I love how we all cheer each other on, and
Yep.
give each other maybe ideas for what we want to chase next.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Jackie's and Jordan's is on. Speaking of passionate collectors.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, we're
Travis?
gonna go into the main event here, and I like what Bob said about this. He shared something when it comes to card backs. He will refrain from looking at the back of cards on his want list. So when he gets it, it's sort of new information that he gets to consume. I love that, and I wanted to say as we jump in, you know, my buddies here know I like card backs, and I cannot lie. That's all I'm going to say about that. We love making jokes about how you know, I really like a clean backside of my cards. A lot of times somebody say like, oh, you know, the only reason I got the grade is all this staining on the back, and I'm like, no. For the most part, I like to have a very clean card back. So I thought this would be a fun topic. We're going to do this as a lightning round. So we each have a pile of cards. It was hard to whittle the list down to 4. But we each chose 4 with a few extras in case we have duplicates. We're going to go around, spend a minute or 2 on each card back, and then we'll discuss kind of on the end. So let's start with Nate. We'll start with you, then Matthew and me, and then we'll just kind of go around in that order until we get through the 12.
Okay, that sounds good. And Jonathan, you recommended starting with our favorite first, or are we counting down to our favorite?
I think we gotta hit the best ones first, because we might have duplicates. There were several that I was looking at that I thought, I bet these guys are gonna pick it too.
Okay, so kind of like claim your favorite first before it gets knocked out.
Yeah, claim it first.
All right. Well, so, you know, one of the things with card backs is, you know, one of the ways I think about it is the front is the art and the back is the history, you know, and a huge part of why we all love collecting is the art and the history, right? Like if I had to boil it down to a couple things, it's those 2 words would be really high on my list in terms of appreciating cards. And so when I think of historic card backs, one of the very first ones that always comes to mind for me is the 48 leaf Jackie. So I'm showing my example of that here, and the first line on this card back is first Negro player in modern organized baseball. And that, you know, I mean, that's kind of says it.
The card is declaring why it's so important right there.
Exactly. There's the history. Made debut in 1947 as a first baseman. That's an interesting trivia question. Hit 296, led in sacrifices, stolen bases, and was chosen Rookie of the Year. And now this is interesting. It says, last season again hit 296, driving in 85 runs, 10th best RBI man in the NL, was All-American football player at UCLA. So, you know, it talks about his rookie season, 47, and then also talks about his 1948 season. So, you know, the 48, 49 leaf thing, you know, and that's one of the things with, and it also, you know, says copyright 1949, which is kind of interesting. So there are some interesting tidbits on there as well about, you know, kind of the 48 versus 49 leaf thing that I think are a little bit hobby interesting. And then, you know, just the pure history of who Jackie was being declared there in the first line, and I'll show the front just briefly. It's
the front.
Hard to argue with that as a place to start.
Awesome.
All right, Matthew.
Awesome. All right, so I am going to go with the card back I'm going to talk about is I've talked about this actually on Rob's podcast. Like one of the very first times I was ever on a podcast is the yellow Gaudy Gehrig from 1934. So I love the back of this card is just, you know, you think about like why card backs are important. And I feel like there's a couple different categories. And like Nate, some of them are just like, it's a kind of a historical impact captured on the back of the card. And so, right, I'm going to just read the back of this Lou Gehrig to you guys, which is, I love the game of baseball and hope to be in there batting them out for many years to come. Fortune has been kind to me, and my record is as follows. Born in New York City, June 19th, 1903. Bat and throw left-handed, height 6 feet 1 inch, weight 205. Last 10 years, hitting average of 343, playing in an average of 149 games per year. And then it says led the American League in runs scored 1933 and 1927, received the vote of the most valuable player in the American League. And so it's that first phrase, right, where it's kind of an unfortunate foretelling of, the misfortune that he's about to go through. And I feel like that this is a card that I just love the front, because it's just like you got a big smiling Lou Gehrig right there. And so the back just sets it off for me. And so that was one of the first ones that came to my mind as like, favorite card back.
By the way, I love, in both of the ones you chose, a lot of old cards have a little blurb at the bottom that's just sort of about, it's about bubble gum, or it's about the set, or it's about, send 10 proofs of purchase to get a little ring, or I mean, there's all this stuff that I just love about the aesthetics of those. And I love the Gaudy, the gum stuff at the bottom. I think it's just great.
Yeah. Way
Great
cool.
choice, Matthew. Love it.
Yeah. Thanks,
love
guys.
Now that you've done it, I can't believe that wasn't on my list.
Those were amazing places to start. So I'm gonna go with the first card in the 54 set, and we all when we chatted a little bit about this topic, I'm not sure any of us thought of the same card from 54, but I kind of knew immediately that I wanted to do a Ted Williams. And as I was going through, by the way, what a fun topic to prepare for, is going through all your cards and looking at the backs, right? Mm-hmm. And the 54 has such a great back because it's got this, it's got a blurb about the bio at the top, some stats. And then I love that it had these 3 different panels of kind of the comics that a lot of the cards from that era had. And, I'll just read what it says about Theodore Samuel Williams. Ted is one of the greatest hitters of all time, ! In 41, he hit 406, the only time any big leaguer hit over 400 since 1930. Still remains true. Other than recently, the record books has been changed, and we have I'm blanking on his name, Josh Gibson. Also in 43 hit over 400. So just those 2 to this day. He led the AL in homers in 41, 42, 47, 49, named most valuable player in 46 and 49. He started in 9 All-Star games hitting 407. He has the highest lifetime batting average of any active player. And then on the comics down below, Ted has always been a hero on the diamond or off. And this is what really made me pick it. And this is why I think we all love Ted Williams. At 35, he was back in the Marines to fly in Korea. He was in service for 14 months. He returned to baseball, and on one of his first appearances, belted a towering home run. And you look at his military record, what a hero the guy was, and how he was able to put up the numbers he did in baseball while leaving for the military twice and coming back. What an inspiring story. I love that it's number 1 in the set, and that's my pick.
Nice.
Awesome.
Love
choice.
that one. Yeah, I mean, the cartoons and that run of like 50s tops is just so cool. I love those things so much. Awesome card.
All right, Nate.
Yeah. So many good backs in that set. The number 250 Ted Williams is really neat too. There's so much going on in that one, but
totally.
That one you just gave. I mean, you could spend hours thinking about all the different aspects of that one card back. That's a really good choice. American Beauty, Broadleaf, Carolina Brights, Cycle, Drum, El Principe de Gal, Hindu, Lennox, Old Mill, Piedmont, Polar Bear, Sovereign, Sweet Cap, Tolstoy, Ty Cobb, and Ooze It. Those are the 16 T206 backs, and no discussion of baseball card backs would be complete without taking a look at a T206 back. So I have here a
great pick.
Polar Bear. Now, so this is not kind of the same sort of history that we usually go with. One of the things we usually like is the write-ups and the biographical data and the statistics and all that. And this is not that. The T206s were different. But, they represented the 16 brands that were sold, or at least that had cards included in them that were sold by the American Tobacco Company. So it was all one company, 16 different brands of cigarettes, or in some cases, including the Polar Bear case, which happens to be my favorite of those 16 backs, it was scrap tobacco, not cigarettes. So it's got that kind of deep blue indigo color. It says, it's pretty neat what it says too. It says Polar Bear is now, always has been, always will be the best scrap tobacco. Baseball series assorted designs. So
That's so awesome. I
right.
love just how thick that black, like the black blue ink of it is. It looks so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Look at that. Looks like that was
That's
printed
one of
yesterday.
one of my favorite T206 backs for sure. That's a great pick.
All right.
All right. Matthew with the fancy webcam. Let's see it.
Webcam. My next pick is the 1949 Bowman Satchel Paige. So this one is cool because it's kind of hilarious. So if you read the back, it's awesome. I love this. One of the most fabulous characters in baseball. Satchel spent many years traveling around the Negro Leagues before being signed to a Cleveland Indian contract. His exact age is not known. But he's been in baseball for years. He appeared in 21 games for the Indians last year, mainly in relief roles, and he wound up with a 6-1 record. Good for an 857 percentage. So that is, I mean, and then it's got like, the baseball ring, submit this thing, which is classic. But I love how it hits on, we don't know how old he is. He's a fabulous character. Like, he's a larger than life person. And then I love how it touches on, his amazing record in that, that World Series winning Cleveland team. The only thing it's missing is I wish it would have talked about like just the crazy crowd draws that he got, right? And during that season, you can hear, these stories about Comiskey being blown up. So when I read this card, it just conjures up all of this stuff that I just love about Satchel Paige. So that's why I had to choose this one.
I picked that one too. That's why I said earlier, like the ring. I use that as an example because it was in my head. But I knew you would pick it. I was prepared. I was prepared to be bummed.
What great choice. So that card, it says his birthday is September 11th, 1908, right?
Yes.
With September 11th, obviously a significant date coming up here in just a few days. Today's the 8th. His birthday now is generally considered to be July 7th, 1906. And I focus on it because my son's birthday is July 7th. And I think it's kind of cool that they share a birthday 102 years apart. At least that's what we think.
Yeah. We'll have to see. We'll have to look at what it says on his 53 tops.
I'm just looking right now. Yeah, it's September 11th, 1908 on the 53
still had
tops.
it.
Yeah.
All right. I'm showing my next one. This is an unlikely pick, but this is Mantle's All-Star card from the 1959 set. And one thing I love about cards, I almost chose a Bobby Orr for the same reason, is I love it when a player is so great during their playing days, like early on even, that it's just sort of declared and known that like the level of greatness. And so
look at that.
Yeah.
And the other thing I love about this is it's such a fun illustration, a really graphical back, and it says, keep in mind, this is a little under or right around halfway through his career, 1959. The guy's been in baseball for 8 years. Mickey is the best switch hitter of all time. No hedging, no sort of like he's up there among, like he is the best switch hitter of all time. He is the tape measure champion of modern sluggers. Bazooka, the Chew of Champions. I mean, it's such a great card back, and it's true. He is the best switch hitter of all time, and I love that early in his career, it was just sort of like this, like we're watching greatness right here, and what a great card back that is. And I didn't know that this was in my top 4 until I went through all the cards, and I just fell in love with it.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's a great. I like what you referenced too, where when it's a early card of a player and it talks about how they're going to be good and it ends up being right. Like the Ted Williams rookie card back does that. Like
totally.
Most people consider him one of the best young players in the game and having a bright future or something like that. Like, yeah, you were right. So my next pick is the T227. I'll show the card. Series of Champions Ty Cobb. And this is a card, and it's not the super attractive back. There's a lot of writing there, but it actually is a back where it kind of influenced me toward really wanting to have this card. And, it's not that often that it really helps me pick a card that I want, the back, but I just thought this back was so good that it helped convince me that it was one of my favorite of all of Ty Cobb's cards. So it says in here, I'll try to continue to show it here. I don't think the video is great, but it says Tyrus Raymond Cobb, champion batsman 1911. Ty Cobb, one of the greatest ball players of all time, is still a young man, having passed his 25th birthday in December 1911. His first experience in organized ball was with the Augusta team in 1904 when he was not yet 18. He did not at first shine as a professional and was farmed to Anniston, where he batted so hard that he was recalled, and in 1905 hit .326 for Augusta. Detroit then bought him, but in the fall that year, he only batted .240 for them in 41 games. Next year, he got into the charmed 300 circle with an average of .320, and has since batted as follows: 1907, .350, 1908, .324, 1909, .377, 1910, .385, and 1911, .420.
Oh my God.
In 1911, he scored 147 runs in 146 games, made 248 hits, 47 doubles, 24 triples, and 8 home runs, and stole 83 bases. Altogether, the most remarkable work ever done by a player in a full season. He is so very fast on the bases that he sometimes seems reckless, but the records show that he reaches the objective base more safely
Love that.
more often than not.
Love that.
To get that contemporaneous view of Ty Cobb from 1912 and kind of where he was already fitting into the game, a little bit about some of the challenges he had early on in his career, and talking a little bit about kind of his personality and his recklessness on the bases. I just thought that card for me, from the historical standpoint and capturing that, who Cobb was to his peers and his contemporaries, just kind of had it all.
That's
Awesome.
so cool. Yeah, it's so well written too. They did such a
It
nice
is.
job on it, right? Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
All right. What do you got, Matthew?
So I'm going to go with the, kind of follow Nate a little bit, go with the
Beauty.
1911 T205 Polar Bear Christy Mathewson. So this card I chose not exactly, I mean, it actually has some pretty nice things about it on the back, but this particular copy looks like this on the back.
Wow.
So what I'm showing is the back of my
Gnarly.
Mathewson is pretty gnarly. I think that this is like scrap tobacco that may have gotten wet or something, and like kind of really munged up the back of the card. It's a readable, but just kind of barely. But what I love about this one is that, another way a card back can be cool is that, the back can tell its own story about, well, I wonder what did this Mathewson card go through, in the course of its life. Like the front's pretty good, it's chipped a little bit, but it's a pretty solid card, no creasing. And then, but yeah, maybe it was in somebody's pocket. Their pocket got a little bit wet. Maybe, something janky happened to it. So
It's not a clean backside.
not a clean backside. And I'm like, it's just cool because then it again goes back to this thing about how cards are, kind of transport you in different parts of time, right, over centuries. And it's cool to think about, what this card was going through. And now it's in my little collection. So that's kind of why I thought about this one. We're getting more people into the chat. I see Jeremy Lee over there says hi. So awesome. Yeah, very cool. Nice to see everybody.
What's up, Jeremy? We were just talking about you earlier in the video. All right, I have 3 more, and I have to choose 2 of them. I don't even know what I'm gonna choose, but I'm gonna go with the first. This is the first big vintage card. This isn't the same copy, but I ever got. A Koufax rookie was sort of the unthinkable conquest that I had to get, and I love this card. And as I was going through and looking at card backs, I mean, I've always loved the back of this card, but there's something really charming about it. Well, so it's got this great little comic, true or false, baseball was first played in Cooperstown, New York. Answer, true. I find that charming. It talks about the Dodgers taking a big step and signing this young guy. They gave him a big bonus. But the thing that I think is really charming about it, and it's the reason I picked it, is there's, in the layout of the set, there's the matrix down at the bottom for stats. And a rookie card, typically it has their first season stats. or their minor league stats. This guy never played in the minor leagues. And I just think it's so funny that it's got his pitching record down there and it says not in organized baseball there, just in black. And it just shows you how green this guy was when he entered the league, but he had so much promise. And, for those who know his story, his first few years in the big leagues were a little bit rocky before he became an all-time great. But I love the colors on the back, and this to me has a lot going for it.
I love that choice, Jonathan. I was not expecting that at all. I love you calling that out. Like, no, there are no stats because he doesn't have any. That's awesome.
Yep.
That is
Very
a great
cool.
choice. I've always thought that was really neat on that card too. Good call.
Nice.
All right, we each get one more. This is going to be hard.
And Matthew, you got me with that last one. It was the first time I got preempted. I had the T205 Matty on my list too.
Man.
My back is not as cool as yours.
Guys.
It does not have the staining, but even independent of the staining, I feel like that's one of my favorite backs. Those backs, I can't remember if you mentioned this, but they were among the very first to have biographical information on them as well. So that was pretty cool from a historical collecting standpoint.
Oh, yeah, you're totally right. Great call out on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the staining, that always reminds me of the, the Cracker Jack cards too.
Totally.
Which, yeah. So yeah, that there's a lot of places you could go with that one. That was a good pick. So for my last choice, I'm gonna go, and it's kind of the tiebreaker was it's sort of one of the theme cards here for us tonight. So the Wilt.
Yeah.
And the back. So these backs, they're not necessarily beautiful, but I just love this set so much. It's just so clearly my favorite basketball card set, and I think they're really well and interestingly written. I picked the Wilt, but I could have chosen many of them, and I like that it says Frank H. Fleer Corp. At the bottom. This was pretty shortly after the Fleer company started. They've obviously, been one of the longest running and most significant card producers in the hobby. And I like that kind of full name that they give there at the bottom, and, kind of allusion to the fact that it's, sort of one of their earlier sets. And then, I just think the write-ups are so well written. For Wilt, it says, the greatest scorer in the NBA, the only player to go over 3,000 points in one season, the record holder for field goal percentage, and the most titanic rebounder in the history of the hardwood. The Big Dipper completely rewrote the record book last season, setting 10 NBA marks, and then it goes on to describe a lot of them. But I really, again, the contemporaneous writing about some of the, the best rookies and best players after, pretty long layoff from having basketball cards, just very much enjoy the history that these ones present.
Great pick. All right, Matthew, what do you got? We're not getting your audio, Matthew.
There,
Oh,
you hear me now?
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I was helping some folks on the Instagram side. So my last card of choice is the 1929 Churchman Babe Ruth card. That's the Baseball USA. And what I like about the back of this one is it's like, right, this is a British tobacco card issued in 1929, which has this like just kick-ass image of
Love the
Ruth
image.
smoking
Yeah.
a bomb. You can see the end of his swing with the catcher and the ump there. But the back of it is funny because the back of it is let me see if we can get this guy in focus here. There we go. So it says Baseball USA. The great national sport of the USA is related to the Old English game of rounders, although it's not certain that baseball is developed from the English game. Over 100 years ago, schoolboys in the North Atlantic states played a game known as One Old Cat. Town ball followed, and further developments resulted in the first regular code of baseball rules being drawn up in 1845. A game consists of 9 innings, played by teams of 9 players, and innings being over when 3 batsmen are out. Attempts made to establish baseball in England have not as yet proven successful. So I just love that, like, yeah, it's like there's this baseball game, they like to play it, but we don't know if we really like it. So I think it's such a fun story.
I love that.
Yeah. So that was
Excellent
my
pick.
last choice. Yeah.
By the way, I have decided as I'm looking at the stack of ones I don't get to share that we got to do this topic again at some point in time. It's too good.
It's fun.
Because I got to come back to some of the others. So the last one I'm going to pick is my recently acquired Whitey Ford rookie, which I just picked up at the National. And so I love Bowman baseball, 1950 through 52. They have these really simple backs. I just love the look of them, and I love the write-ups. And what it says about Whitey Ford here after his first year. It's really all about what it says at the end. Joined New York Yankees midway through their 1950 pennant drive. He wowed the fans by winning 9 games while losing only 1. Hung up a 900 percentage and an ERA of 2.81. Won the last game of the World Series. Whitey is not wearing a baseball uniform in 1951. He's occupied with a more important job for Uncle Sam. Good luck, Whitey, in the Army and on your return. And it's card number 1. And I think until Ken Griffey Jr. in Upper Deck 1989, this was the big number 1 in the set Hall of Fame rookie card in baseball, and still up there for me. But I love that write-up. I love the good luck, Whitey, in the Army and on your return.
Now that's an example of a card that I know the card and I had no idea it had that back. That's really cool. Yeah, I had no idea it had that back.
Yeah, and it's why it's so fun to dig in like this and really focus and read all the backs and soak it in. It's a fun one to prepare for. Awesome selections, guys. I knew we would have a few overlaps there, but didn't know what they would be.
One other, and I don't have one of them handy right now, but one other kind of category of card backs that I think is really neat is the last card of a player, right? A couple of them I thought, the 69 Mick, 73 Clemente, 73 Mays, and 76 Aaron are some good examples of guys that had really long careers, and then on the back you see like all their stats is the main thing, and you just have this great snapshot of their career. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, I remember
like Pete Rose or Nolan Ryan.
The font gets really small. The font gets so small.
Yeah, I always think of Nolan's like 1991 Topps card, and it's just like ink, it's just. And then like so many of them have the little diamond or the italicized to show that he led the league. I always think that's pretty cool, just straight dominance.
Right. Yeah, very exactly. Cool. Yeah, that's cool. That is really cool. And then Travis, Jackie's and Jordan's, I thought made a good point in the comments too. And he said, I'm not sure we all care a lot about eye appeal, but I'm not sure there's anyone in the world that cares more about eye appeal than Travis. And he said, I care a lot about the eye appeal on the front, but not so much on the back. And I'm right with him on that. Like and Matthew, the T205 Matty that you showed with all the staining, I feel like the back is an opportunity to add some more character to the card. And if it has wax stains or tobacco stains or, bubblegum stains or whatever.
Sugar stains.
Yeah, right. Yeah, a lot of the Bowman cards from the era that you were showing some cards from, Jonathan, the late 40s and early 50s Bowman cards will have the wax staining on the back and stuff. And I'm cool with that too. I think it's kind of neat and, adds a little more character to the card. So I thought that was a good comment by Travis.
Yeah, totally. All right, so we let's move on to our last topic, which is just recent pickups and mail days. And I'm excited to see what you guys are going to show. So let's just keep the same order. So Nate, let's start with you, and then Matthew, and I'll bring it home.
All right, so I have a couple of them here. So I've been working on a little project the last few weeks, and it was Corner Taken Quickly that kind of got me back into this. So I have so many cards from the 80s. It's like crazy, and we're going to talk at some point about the right number of cards to have in your collection, and the 80s cards that I have. At some point, I probably need to cut that number, but but I got on a kick recently of kind of like working on completing my 80s Rickey Henderson collection. So I've been getting all these little mail days, and I'm putting them all in binders. And so here is Rickey's. I don't know if you can see it all, but
we can.
His Fleer run from 81 to 89.
I love that 81. That's such
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that is. Let's see. Can you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can see it.
Yeah, yeah. That is a cool card. The 82, I feel like I hadn't seen very much. That was one I needed to get. So I've had like a few holes in my Ricky collection, and then I've got the Don Russ run as
Oh,
well,
Oh,
nice.
81 to 89.
scorching.
So
Yeah, look at that.
and it's kind of cool, like kind of right in the middle of the 80s, he transitions from the A's to the Yankees. So you get those awesome A's colors early in his career, and then some
Yeah.
really cool Yankees cards later in the 80s. So I'm going to be posting all these at some point, but that's a fun like group of like $3 and $5 mail days that I've been getting for the last few weeks, running to the mailbox to help fill up my binder pages. And then
Sweet.
the big card that I got recently, that I'm really pretty excited about, and you guys know this one. I don't have it in hand, so I have to show a picture. But it's.
I'm so glad you went for it. This is a 1953 Topps, the short print Willie Mays, the nicest eye appeal you'll ever see on the thing. Who cares
Yeah.
what the grade is? It looks
It's a 3.5.
so
Yeah.
so bright, so centered.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and this one I had gotten a PSA 2, and I was kind of excited about it, but it didn't like totally get me going, and so I kept looking, and this 3.5 came available, and was able to negotiate a deal, and then I got a nice surprise actually just this weekend too, which is it hit my my now Fanatics vault, and it got the elusive S
The S
5% sticker
Well-
there. So
Well deserving.
that was a nice little payoff. So yeah, I was already like super excited about that card, and then to get the little cherry on top or on the back, I guess in this case, which is also fitting. Best place to put a sticker is on the back. Was a nice way to wrap up that acquisition.
Well done, man.
That was
well
a
done.
stunning example. Stunning example, Nate. God, I can't
Thank
wait
you,
for you
guys.
to have it in hand and
Yeah.
show it. Yeah, very
For
cool.
sure. Appreciate
All right, what do you got, Matthew?
All right, so I'm one of those people that just like has like long durations of chasing after certain cards, and this
Yes,
one
you
was,
do.
This was a very long duration search. So what I'm showing is a T206 Piedmont 150 Walter Johnson portrait in very good three. So I think this is a sharp example, and this one also, so much of my collecting over the past year and a half has been like kind of in my post 1952 mantle collecting phase. And, as part of that trade in the 52 mantle, I traded the action image of Walter Johnson. And I traded it because I knew that I wanted to get the portrait. And so I've been kind of like trying to chase that portrait for a really long time, and finally found this example, which I think is a really, really sharp. This card, for people who are familiar with it, is just crazy tough on the registration, just super tough. And this registration is very, very. It's not perfect, but it's dang nice. It's a really sharp, good corners, well centered, and just a really lovely example. So I was super happy to get this guy. I haven't posted it to Instagram yet, but I will one of these days. Thanks, Travis, for the shout on. And thank you, Bob, as well. Yeah, Bob Hostess says, let me put it up there. He says the portrait image is so haunting, can't get enough of it. That's exactly right. It's classic Walter Johnson, man. So that's the one I knew I had to get, and finally got it. Very happy with it.
Man, it's an amazing copy. I still see Jude Law every time I look at that card, but yeah, I want one. Now that you guys both have one, I want to get one. You better lock that up if you ever invite me over to your house.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Look at
Very
the color on that thing, man. That is
Yeah.
great. And as you said, the registration is just so tough. He is, that's I just when I see that card, I just think angelic with that background and like the glowing blonde hair. But you want the angel without the halo, right? Because if the registration is off a little, you get that halo, especially on the left more often than not. And
Yeah,
there's no
right
there's
there
no
in his
halo on
hair.
that angel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was the first thing my eye went to judge the reg, and I was like, oh man, this is the example for me. Gotta
That thing
chase
is
it.
tight and bright, beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, very happy with it.
Guys, I should have gone first. Now I have to show my trash after you guys show that stuff. All right, how can I spotlight myself. All right. The first one I'm going to show, I love playing the grading games. I have a complete set of 1987 Fleer basketball, really high grade. And I thought, if I'm going to pick the 10 or 15 best ones and try to get a gem mint 10. And I got a 10 on the Alex English. I was excited. I got a bunch of 9s back, and this was the 110, but it was fun to get a gem. It's a pretty low pop. Nice. And now I can say I have a 10 in my set. So, and a bunch of 9s too.
And look at those beautiful old Nuggets uniforms from the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Sweet.
How is that not artwork? And you got James Worthy in here too. I mean, that's a good looking card. Travis, I thought you would like that one. I showed it partly for you. Now I'm going to lose some viewers when I show a modern shiny card. My most viewed reel ever on Instagram is my kids and I ripping open a whole box of 1987 Flair Showcase basketball. I love the set. It's my favorite modern set. I had all the other MJs other than this Rose Zero that I'm showing. And I'd been waiting and waiting and waiting for a lower grade copy to come to market. I looked at the National 3 years in a row. I'm holding up a PSA 7 that I just picked up. It was a My Slabs auction, and I felt like I got a great deal on it. This card is serial numbered to 250. There's just 250 of them in the world, and one of them's mine. So it's other than the rookie card, it's probably the best MJ in my collection. So I'm really enjoying it. It also completely looks like a gem other than this really weird thing on the back. So it is tempting me to crack it out and play some grading arbitrage, but not until I enjoy it thoroughly for a while. And then I'm going to show one more to just win back the viewers. This is a low grade 56 tops Ted Williams. At the first card show I ever did, I ever set up at, I sold my old copy. It was a 4. It was a little off-centered. And I've just been looking and looking and looking for a centered copy to add back. And Adam Wise on Instagram, he heard that I'd been looking at the National and couldn't find one that I liked. And he said, I have a beautiful copy. And I knew right away that it would be the one. So it was it was like, just from what he told me, I'm like, just send the card. It's a 3.5. I love it, and this is one that checked a box that's been unchecked for a while for me now. So those are my 3.
Nice,
awesome.
Man. Fun pickups.
Yeah, great cards. Yeah,
and that
really
cool.
MJ,
you showed it, but I've seen other angles of that one. It did not do it justice, what we saw in here. That is a beautiful card from many, many different angles, and yeah, I know you're excited about grabbing that one and the condition, and it's one you've been after a long time. So we're vintage, but I mean, come on, everybody.
We all do some shiny.
Everybody does MJ. Too.
Yeah, totally. And when I ripped open that box, I got the Alonzo Mourning card that was like this. The Mourning is out of 2000, but holding that, and that's on my IG page too, but holding it and looking at it made me realize I have to get the MJ of this. It's just too pretty of a card. So fun to finally grab that one. Well, guys, I think we did pretty, other than the first 10 minutes of technical difficulties, we pulled it off our first time. So I think we should wrap it up here. I just want to thank everybody that jumped over and found the YouTube link. And I think we have all of 8 subscribers now. So, we're moving up in the world.
All right. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. And I just wanted to thank Steve again, too, the buyer of the 61 Fleer Wilt, for being so gracious and talking about some of his thoughts in acquiring that card. I think that was neat to get his perspective. And appreciate you guys. It was a lot of fun.
Very cool. All right. Yeah. Thanks. Great time as always. Can't wait for us to do this again.
Let's do it again soon. All right. Over and out.